Welcome to Seizing Valor, where we discover God's path for manhood, one conversation at a time. I'm Zack.
I'm Joe.
I'm Josh.
Some of those words in our intro, they kind of don't blend together very well. I almost tongue tripped over a few of those.
Where we discover.
Where we discover.
Where we discover. Yeah.
Say that 3 times fast.
Did you guys know when I was a kid, I had a speech impediment, or I
did
couldn't
too.
say I couldn't
Yes,
say
I
my
did too.
R's.
I had trouble with my pronouns. I would not have lasted in 2022, and I also spoke in third person.
Oh, I mean, I just couldn't say R's, so I would say I caw and like hawk and squirrel. Like even when I think of words with hard R's like that, I like have to tell myself to say it properly, even after all these years. And it slips. If I'm like really tired, it'll like come out. I'll be like the world or like the squirrel. So I have to like really think about the R, like the R, like closing off the R I had to really learn.
You silly wabbit.
Yeah, exactly. Elmer Fudd for many years. 2 hours ago, Eli went up to me and was like, "Grace and John are free." I was like, "Free? Like, yeah, we're all free." And he's like, "No, I'm 4." I was like, "Oh, I mean 3," because he literally did that. He said F instead of CH. Yeah, so it's funny you said that. I thought that today. I was like, "Oh, you meant 3 years old?"
Like, that's what I said. Come on, Dad, keep up.
It's like, of course we're free. It's America, son.
Of course we're free. Jesus set us free, son.
I had a win the other day. We had a friend over because we did some jamming here in the garage, and Sunday morning or Sunday night we did jamming, so we had a friend over. But anyways, so this guy was like, he came over and was talking to Eli. I was like, "Eli, what'd you do this morning?" Like, "Oh, we went to church," and then he asked, "Oh, what do you like? What's your favorite thing about church?" And kid you not, without me like poking him, he said Jesus.
Yes.
He was like, "Jesus." I was like, "Yes." His favorite part of church. I was worried because they always like kind of have fun. They get toys and snacks and stuff just to But then I thought he was going to say one of those things. But he was like, "No, he said Jesus."
It's crazy what kids come up with.
Yeah, a dad win.
Yeah, or like what they take in, especially with that stuff. My niece is like that all the time. Like she has such profound thoughts like about Jesus, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is why God said to be like a child.
Yeah. No, it's true.
No.
Perfect innocence and joy and a pure understanding.
Be shrewd like a snake, but also be innocent like a dove.
And things like that saying reminds me of float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, which has to do with boxing, which has to do with our topic for today.
What are we talking about?
Ding, 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 ding.
We are doing our first, I wouldn't even call it a movie review as much as like
movie analysis,
a movie discussion, so to speak. Yeah, a movie discussion. And we are going to be talking about the movie Cinderella Man, which is it's a true boxing story, or based on a true story.
This is a true coming of actually, no, I'd say it a true comeback story, Yeah.
It's we'll describe it a little bit more, but it's like Rocky, but real. And so how was our week, everybody?
Guys, I had quite an adventure, so to speak, an endeavor. It was filled with pain, regret, but also celebration at the same time. I was a true hero. You can call me Luke Skywalker. All right. Anyway, enough of the analogies. Okay.
So, build up, man. What are we talking about?
So I was actually with my men's group back on Thursday, the day before my birthday.
Happy birthday, Joe.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, Joe.
If you're listening right now, take a second, pause this video,
and comment.
Happy birthday to Joe. Just out loud.
Tell him how beautiful his skin looks.
Even if he can't hear you.
I did wash my face before this.
Good. That's the first step.
And moisturize. So what happened on Thursday, we were slow cooking like ribs and chicken for a good 2 hours or so before we were discussing, I think our topic was on surrender to God. And I kid you not, I had one huge rib bigger than my torso. Basically, I wouldn't be surprised if it was the rib of a stegosaurus. It was tremendous. It tasted
That was great, man.
It was beautiful. I had the whole darn thing up to the bone, stuck that thing dry. But I started to feel it around 1 a.m.
Uh-oh.
I woke up from my slumber
Stegosaurus
to like
again.
just like I wouldn't be surprised if the alien from Alien 1979 like just bursted out of my chest. But alas, I took a ginger ale from my fridge, nice cold ginger ale, and it took me an hour to finish this because it just nothing was agreeing with me. I was going to work out at like 4:30 in the morning, set a bunch of alarms, and then I woke up at 7 o'clock. I just slept through all those alarms. Late for work.
Oh.
I would have been late for work, but I just emailed them. I was like, hey, having a stomach issue last night kind of proved a little bit difficult for my awakening. And they're like, I got you, Joe. I was 53 minutes technically late, but I filled out what papers I needed to fill out for compensatory time. Yeah, and I just vegged out for 20 minutes in my office because I was still feeling the rib.
Oh. Well, Joe, I think you found out you're Stegosaurus intolerant. So,
and this is my birthday, mind you. This is my birthday. Hung out with some coworkers after work. Then when I was with my family in Rhode Island on Saturday, hung out. We went out to dinner. By this point, I was aces. They got me an ice cream maker and a portable grill.
Whoa.
You can have your own barbecue now.
I'm so excited. And then I played guitar for church on Sunday. Went on a hike. Yeah, and then I just finally had some me time, some Joe time. The Stegosaurus was conquered.
Nice.
That's what we get for them going extinct. It's their revenge, Josh.
All right, so I had a good week. I was very busy. Did a lot of performances again. It's been like crazy busy, which is a good thing. So we did a couple of masses and a holy hour during the week. One of them was this really nice like alumni memorial mass. So it was very heartfelt. It was at a local college, local high school, Catholic high school, and they last year, the year prior, they lost a student to suicide, and so they did this big thing for him, and it was really nice. It was powerful. They had the family there, and it was just a reminder of like the beauty of the church in the midst of tragedy, you know, and like bringing people together and the unity that comes from it. And so that was nice. It was nice, you know, a little teary eyed while, you know, making some music, you know, working on the Christmas album still. We're 10 tracks in, which is exciting. We have about 3 more to go, which will be done by tomorrow or the next day. And then I got to mix and master it. Yeah, well, things are good.
Zach.
The weekend kind of was like the big thing. So, well, first on Friday, my dad came down and brought me, I finally now have some outdoor furniture. So I have like a really nice deck back yonder. But I haven't been able to sit out there because I haven't had anything to sit on outside. So either I like sit like crisscross applesauce outside being just like, this is nice, or, you know, I finally got some furniture that my sister didn't need anymore. So that was nice. So my dad came down and brought that, but it was really just good just to spend some time with my dad.
Yes.
Which I haven't spent some alone time with my dad in a while. So it was good to kind of catch up with him. We went to this pizza place that's literally right around the corner from my house. But while we were there, a nice old gentleman kind of like sat down like at our table just kind of randomly. Like just we went up to get our drinks, and then I turn around to see that this old guy's just like starting to sit down at our table. And at first I'm kind of coming over and be like, is he taking our table? But it just turned out like he was having knee like pain, so he was just needed to sit down. So it's just like, oh, it's okay. And so we ended up striking up a conversation for a while with him. His name was Lou. So Lou, if you ever listen to this, which probably won't, but it was great talking with you. So yeah, he was just kind of from the area, and he was telling us a little about his life, his kids, like his career. He talked about your body failing you as you get old, I guess. So it's weird, you know, when someone starts talking about an injury, like I don't know, I'm not sure if that's a guy thing or something. You all just start talking about injuries, like, oh yeah, you need I had my shoulder, like I had this thing, and then it's so you just keep going around, just being like, oh yeah, like I have problems with this, life, right? But yeah, so that was good, and then the next then kind of the whirlwind of things happening kind of started then the next morning. So Saturday, I woke up and I drove down to York again. I know last time I said I went to York, but I went to York again. And they had a big retreat down there that's called Fan the Fire. So it's like it's technically for anybody, but it's big like in our diocese. So I went to that I could only go for a little bit. But I was there for like an hour. It's like a youth retreat. So for middle school, high school kids, and it's really like, you know, like big music, like big adoration, you know, I don't know, they could get hundreds of kids and things like, so it's really just kind of awakening like their faith and like really making it come alive. So it was good to see like the youth ministers like putting on something like that. So it was good to see it. And then, from there, the reason I had to leave is I had to go to a wedding in New Jersey. So I like had to drive all the way to Jersey. So like for 3 hours. And so I was there. It was a Russian Orthodox wedding. So it was
it's a first.
Well, actually, this is my second time going to
a Russian Orthodox
wedding.
Wow.
So I went with I was actually the plus one of one of our friends, you know, from back in the Marywood days, Anne Marie, and I was her plus one. So this was actually like, and I was the plus one when the sibling of this person got married. So it's like the same church, just like different sibling. So the first thing. So none of it was really a surprise for me, which thank goodness. The first time was a little bit of a surprise, literally in every direction. But the second time around, first of all, like no chairs, nothing. You stand the entire time. It's a very small space, and you just stand. Like you stand and you watch. Number two, they sing everything, so there's no speaking. It's all singing. Everything's done 3 times because that's a perfect number. So everything is repeated 3 times, again and again and again.
It's like Les Miserables, church edition.
Well, kind of. I mean, lots of the Eastern rites, they do a lot of singing and things, like the holiness of it, which was beautiful. One of the things that they do, I know that we don't do in most like Western churches, they have like the rite of crowning. So like you have the typical like the exchanging of bands and everything, but one of the things they do is they have these crowns. So they have these 2 big like king, like they look like, you know, a king's crown, you know, with like the red poofy thing on top and everything, and like the gold. And everything. But so what they do is the best man, well, 2 of the men, I guess, the best man, and then like one of the other men, like for the woman, there's a crown for each of them, and they hold them above their heads for like the entirety of this rite of crowning. So they have to hold them above. They're not allowed to touch the person's head, and they're actually not allowed to touch them themselves. They have to use like little handkerchiefs and hold them. Kind of like in the Catholic Church, like to use the cloth to like hold the monstrance.
Yeah.
So it's like they're holy, so you're not supposed to touch them. But they literally have to hold them up, and that the rite of crowning is probably at least like 15 to 20 minutes. Like it's a lot of literally. They were like, and they'll have to switch hands. They actually had to switch people like halfway through. They had to get 2 other groomsmen to come and take the crowns. It was you feel for them, and like then the first guys are in the back after they take them, like patting their heads with the cloth. It's like
they must be really heavy then.
They look at, or anything you hold above your head for too long is going to get heavy.
Yeah.
Like blood,
did they
like,
hold it with bent arms, or did they have to use straight arms?
As long as it's above the person's head, like it doesn't really matter. I was like saying it's like I feel like a fishing rod type deal, like hang it. Like I feel like that would solve a lot of problems.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Attach it to the belt. Yeah.
Significance of suffering for the couple or something. But then there's
other things. What would happen if they dropped it? Is like wedding over? You can't get married.
Probably. Your marriage is going to fail.
Just start the whole thing all over again.
Yep. Just like, crap, we have to start
all back to the beginning.
From the top. Off, we're going back to the entrance. Like,
all right, so where did we meet for dating? I have to start the courting phase again.
Or they're just like, nope, you can't get married. It's not going to work out. That's a sign. Time to dive into our movie breakdown. So we are talking about the movie Cinderella Man, which, as I said, is based on a true story of James J. Braddock, who one
released
of his nicknames
in 2005, director Ron Howard.
Yes. So James J. Braddock He was a boxer during the Depression, the Roaring '20s and the Depression era. He was, I say, the segue was because one of his nicknames was he was the pride of New Jersey, because he was from North Jersey. So essentially, I'm going to give a little plot summary for anybody who has not listened before. So there might be some spoilers here for anybody who's listening. So if you want to kind of skip ahead, like just to us talking about it. But if we go over the themes, you're probably going to figure out this stuff anyway. So anyway, spoilers. All right. So plot summary. So as I said, this is about James J. Braddock, who was a real life person, and he was a rising boxer in
Russell
the
Crowe.
20s. In the late, yes, Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe is our hero. Plays our hero. So he is a rising star in the boxing world in the late 20s, the late 1920s. He's like, I think, the #1 contender for either. I think he was a champion of both like the light heavyweight and the heavyweight division, and he was going to be like the top challenger for the heavyweight division. And he's living a good. The film opens. He's like living a good life. He like lives in the suburbs with his wife May, who's played by Renee Zellweger. And his kids and everything, and things are going great. He's winning lots of money. His trainer then is Joe Gold, who's played by Paul Giamatti. But then the Depression hits, and it hits everyone hard, including him. So it transitions from them living in this like very fancy house to now they're living in like a rundown apartment because the Depression hit. So all of his like investments and everything like that he like in his savings and everything kind of disappeared because of the Depression. But then also he hit a string of bad luck in terms of he like got injured during his boxing career. So he couldn't stop boxing because he needed to make money so that they could live, but he kept boxing injured, but then therefore he kept losing. So his like career kind of took a big tumble. So we find the family in a very, very low spot. They're kind of very like they're scraping by, like every day is a struggle. He's still boxing, but once again, he's not making big money. He is still trying to get work on the docks. So he's going out to the docks like during the Great Depression. It wasn't like you didn't work like you had a contract and you work yearly at this time in our American history. You kind of went out and you got jobs daily. So like you would go out, like you would go to where they're looking for workers and they would pick people out of the crowd. And then you would go in and work. So like you didn't have a guaranteed job. So he was doing that to make money, but then like he was also boxing. But during a boxing match, then he like breaks his hand like so bad that he can't box anymore. But not only that, his boxing has become so bad that the Boxing Federation revokes his license. And so that he's considered essentially an embarrassment. And so he's kicked out of boxing. So they end up falling on really, really, really hard times. He's trying to work. He's got this broken hand. Things are a real struggle for him. Like his family is struggling. Like his children are afraid they're going to have to be sent away because there's not enough money. The wife is like him and his wife are trying to do their best to, keep up good appearances and to stay positive. In the meantime, they have a few friends that are also struggling on hard times. One in particular, his name is Mike, is like kind of like he's the guy who speaks about like all the political goings-ons and everything. I think his character, I'm not sure if his character actually existed, but he's just maybe like a representation of kind of like the struggles of the time, men struggling at the time. He's like kind of like more of the activists, like saying the politicians need to change things, such and such and such. Whereas James is more of like very practical. He's like, I'm not fighting something I can't see. Like I'm focusing on fighting the battles in front of me. So anyway, so they get on really hard times, eventually to the point where the kids do have to get sent away. And I'm definitely going to talk about this scene later. But then James, he has to go on assistance and, he has to beg for money in order to keep his kids, and so him and his wife can keep their kids. Not like forcibly, they're not forcibly removed. It's not like social services. It's like, they sent them away to their relatives who are more well off so that they can be better taken care of. But then they come back. And then eventually during this time, his trainer, Joe, comes to him and says that he has like one last fight for him to fight. Like he doesn't need a license. It's just going to be one last fight. He's going to fight one of the contenders for the title just as like a warm-up fight because the other guy like canceled like short notice and they just want someone to fill in the spot. So he's not expected to win. He's just expected to go. He's supposed to fight and then like he's supposed to lose gracefully and then that's the end of his career. But in the end, he actually wins because now this is like so far later that he's all healed up and everything. And because he couldn't use his one hand, like his other hand got so much stronger and all this other stuff. So he was able to actually fight and win. And so then through he gets like this string of victories over these contenders until he becomes the number one contender again. And like his family keeps making money, and now they're doing better. They're still not like living the high life, but they're doing better. They're out of debt, like, and all that stuff. And he kind of has this better perspective as to like what he's fighting for. He's not fighting for fame or name or fortune or anything. He's fighting for survival. He's fighting for his family. He's fighting for the people he loves. So eventually he gets to be the number one contender against the world champion, Max Baer. I had who he's played by in the notes. I don't remember.
Craig Bierko.
What?
Craig Bierko.
Yes, what Joe said. And Max, at least in this movie, is known to be very vicious. Like he's killed 2 guys in the ring just through like his sheer power and ferocity. Though for anyone listening
not true.
I've researched into this, like Max Baer was not actually like this in real life. They just kind of play up his character dramatically to like make him a bad guy. But so anyway, he's this guy who like kills people in the ring, and then there's the conflict between May, James's wife, doesn't want him to box because she doesn't want him to die. Like she doesn't want, but he at the same time knows that in order for them to like make it and to them to have enough and to survive, like he needs to take the fight, and he also doesn't want to run away. So eventually he does step in the ring and fights against Max, and he wins in a very long, hard-fought battle that was decided, like went all the rounds and went to decision. But he wins against Max Baer, and he becomes the world champion. And then it kind of like a live happily ever after type of deal. So that's obviously there's way more to the movie than that, but that's kind of the general overall plot synopsis. And we kind of talked about, like, I mean, the most important characters already. I mean, we have James J. Braddock, who's our main character, as you said, Russell Crowe. We have Renee Zellweger plays May Braddock, his wife. He has 3 kids that are played by actors that I'm not sure if they ever made it to anything else, but these 3 young children. His trainer, Joe Gould, is Paul Giamatti. Then Max Baer, Joe said who he gets played by. I can't remember. I apologize. So, all right. So, gentlemen, this is a movie that we all agreed was a good manly film, so to speak, or has a lot of good manly themes in it. So first of all, what did you guys think? Give me your initial thoughts.
Yeah, I absolutely think this is a man's man type of movie. You know, Jim Braddock, he wasn't fighting for, his ego or even just to show that he was a man. He fought to buy his children, like he said in the movie, milk. In the worst of the Depression, it affected everyone, including Max Baer, actually, who's portrayed as a rich spendthrift guy. But if being faithful to your wife, and swallowing your pride to take care of your family isn't the definition of a real man, I don't know what is.
Yeah, it's an incredible story. It really is. It's one of my favorite movies. I think it was the first DVD that Claire and I bought as like a married couple. And we watch it probably once a year. It's just an incredible, really, really great story. And just like what you guys said, it's like how a man should be, fighting for his loved ones and putting milk on the table and, risking it all regardless of himself. It's the whole sacrifice for service, it's beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, as you guys mentioned, like, I mean, I just love the self-sacrificialness. Like that's like my favorite part of how Russell Crowe like depicts Jim Braddock in this movie. I think I've talked about this with you guys before, but man, like, and everyone knows that like self-sacrifice. Oh yeah, you give up what you have. Like, oh, you give up like your physicality. Oh, like he's not afraid to like get hurt or do the work. I mean, 2 scenes in particular really get me, like when it comes to like his self-sacrifice. I mean, the first one is at the beginning when it's like showing them on hard times and everything, and like they're in the house, they're in the rundown apartment, and he's got to go to work, and so the wife May is like making them like little ham steaks for breakfast, and his daughter wakes up and she comes and she eats hers, but she's still very hungry because they're not very well off. And that how he first, not only he gives up his own food, like so that his daughter can have more, not like so that she can, it's not like she has nothing, but he wants her to have more, so he gives up his breakfast, complete breakfast, so that she can eat more, so that she can have more, or that she doesn't have to see that they're struggling. And just the way he does it too, like he talks about, it's like, oh, I had this dream that I was eating so much and everything, and I'm just so stuffed. Like, can you help me eat my breakfast? Like he made it so that it didn't seem like he was giving it to her like out of charity. Like it was like so that I don't know, it was just so, it's just such a good dad moment.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and he had to go out and work. Like, he's the one who really needed it, because he had to go out and work and like earn the money. But he was like, no, I'm gonna let my kid have more food. And even though his wife is like begins to protest, he's like, no, it's fine, it's fine. So, but not just that scene, but the other scene that really gets me every time, like every single time, even this time I watched it again, is when the kids get taken away, and he has to literally like give up his pride. He has to go sign up for relief, like the relief fund. But not just that, he goes to all the rich people in the boxing federation and he begs. He like begs in front of them for money. Like, and you could tell like that's not something he wanted to do, because he was a man much of like, he was giving up his pride. Like, he was giving up his reputation. He's like, I don't care about what I look like as long as I can have my kids back. Like, and that gets me every single time.
Yeah. It's a powerful scene.
So
it's such an incredible example of a dad, like the perfect, like how a dad is supposed to be, you know.
Yeah. And like, did you see it before you were married, Josh?
Yes.
And then you saw it again after you were married.
Yeah, and it hit me, you know, because like there was the responsibility and the duty as husband, and now as, you know, as a father. Like, I feel all that stuff, you know. And it hits home. It really does.
What about from the marriage perspective? Like, you know, these two obviously went through a lot, and there's even like another couple, as I said, we talked about the friend Mike, and he's married, and their marriage struggles tremendously under the same circumstances, and I think that's intentional. That's like a foil. But so like, what are your opinions like in terms of like it's how it outlines what a good strong marriage should be, especially like in tough times?
Yeah, no, definitely, because they lean into each other. They lean into each other as opposed to growing apart, right? Like that was the good example of his friend Mike there. He gets drunk a lot, and he goes away from the house, and he kind of, you know, loses himself. He distances himself from his wife. When in reality, you should draw nearer to your spouse, and in the midst of turmoil and difficulty, because, you know, the Lord gave you your spouse to you know, achieve things together and to work together and to overcome things and to ultimately get to heaven, right? But here on earth to fight it. So yeah, leaning into each other and loving and looking after and wanting what's best. But then also, if we can even head in this direction, that he acts as a man and that he is the head, right? So even, of course, you know, his wife is concerned about him, is concerned about, you know, and rightfully so, because she doesn't want him to die in the ring, but she still like submits in the sense of allowing him to still serve the family and to serve her through going, you know, taking a risk and going into the fight still. And that's how it should be, you know, love and respect and submission, and not in a lording, abusive power kind of way, but like recognition of the lordship of men, right, and the head of the household, and how they kind of run the family. And it's beautiful, man.
Yeah. I have one other scene that I really want to get your take on, because I really thought of you in this scene. So the scene when like he catches his son stealing, and then he makes him take it back, and then he talks to him afterwards about it. I want to hear your thoughts on that, because I really thought about you and like, you know, your way that you know, parent,
your role as a teacher,
the parent and stuff. Yeah, exactly. Because I feel like what happens nowadays is oftentimes people will ignore their children or even ignore discipline because they're afraid of what that means, right? But when the reality is, like, discipline is just education. It's not abuse, it's education. So the idea is that, you know, the children need to know that an action is wrong, that they shouldn't do it, and they need to confront it and recognize that there's consequences to those actions. So the fact that he made him return it and to go back and to apologize is just showing, you know, making it like a tangible thing that the kid did, that it was wrong, right? And like, that's how you do it. You go on their level, you recognize when something was wrong, you know, especially as a father, and then you make it right through them, and that they have to go, and you physically go and make something right. And to just be consistent with that as well. Like, it's, you know, that's how you do it. And I see that in my own children. Like, whenever they do something wrong, Like they need to know that what you did was wrong. There's consequences for your actions every single time. Every single time you hit your brother, every single time you hit your sister, you got to go to your room, and I'm going to go up there. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to get down your level. I'm going to look you in the eyes and say, do you know what you did? Do you know what you did? And do you know that it was wrong? I love you still, but next time you shouldn't be doing that. And then return to life, But yeah. That's education. That's teaching. That's learning. That's what discipline is. It's not I'm going to hit you because I'm angry at you. It's I'm going to teach you what you should know about life and like what's right and wrong.
Mm-hmm. And not just that, like he also like levels with him afterwards, like after he makes him return it. He's like he kind of like indirectly gets at like why did you do this? Like why did you feel the need to steal? Like it's like we don't steal, but then like he got like the kid to say that like I'm afraid that you're gonna send me away because we don't have no much to eat, and like that was my reason. Like and then he like kind of comforts him and be like, we're not gonna do that. And not just that, but the idea that some people could easily have been just like, well, you stole it anyway, and it's already here, and we're hungry, so we might as well eat it. Like, but the
temptation of that was so great.
Yeah. He valued teaching his son the lesson more than he valued the food.
Putting food on the table.
Yeah. And then I would say too, just leaning into that, the fact that he listened to him, right, and that he wanted to hear out the reasonings behind it, and then listened. And I feel like oftentimes we don't do that sometimes. Like if we see a problem and we just want to smite it, like we don't care about the reasoning when even though the person may have a valid reason to why they justify their actions, And so it's good to, pile onto that to add into that teaching moment. Well, I understand like you thought this was a good idea, and like, there's a circumstance that we're in where maybe you can justify it, but it's still wrong, and therefore yeah cool.
And the other thing
I love this movie. It's so good. It's such a good movie.
If you are a parent or a father or well, I mean, I guess if you're a mother and a wife too, I mean, there's a good example in May Braddock as well, for those that that are women. But like I love also how like kind of speaking of the kids, like how it values children so much. Like this idea is that the May sends the kids away at one point because like they're getting sick because the heat. Like the reason they have to beg to keep the kids is because the heat, like they lose the heat and the gas, like and the electric and everything because they can't pay the bills, and so she sends them away because they start getting sick, and so she wants them to not. But and then this is also then after James like promised that he wouldn't send them away, but so he so desperately wants them to stay, like he like that they are a value, like they are invaluable, like they are so important to them. Like some people could have easily been like, oh yeah, we send them away and now we can focus on us, or now we can send them away, like it'll be easier on us now financially if they're not here, or we'll have more freedom if they're not here, like all this stuff. But they were both like that, like he desperately wanted his children back, like, and that just no matter how hard or difficult it made their lives to have children, like that was like having his children there was more important. Like that was his purpose, and that was like I think just in our society now, people don't value children enough sometimes. Like they see them as a burden, whereas like in this movie it portrays them as a blessing, like so much as a blessing. And I love that.
Yeah, I mean, speaking truth, it's like we become so selfish, and like the whole family model that parents, and I see it all the time, even in my neighborhood, like how parents mistreat their children and how they view them as just like you're just in the way of my life, and it's a shame. It's
seeing children as an obstacle from your own personal goals is the true definition of being selfish. I think putting your children like even before you is a true definition of what an adult, or even in this case in Jimmy Braddock, a man should be.
Yeah. And that's like the purpose of marriage, really, is to bring forth life and to raise it and to sustain it over your own life. Like that is the purpose. And I think this movie encapsulates that perfectly, of like what the mission of a husband is, what the mission of a wife is, and what the purpose of children are. Like, that they are that blessing, and that and especially like I think too, it's like this was during the Great Depression era, you know, so the movie spans, as I said, it starts in the late 20s, but then like it proceeds. 1935 is when he actually fought Max Baer. But it's because it was in the Great Depression era, like, you know, there wasn't as much stuff. Like people didn't have stuff. So I think it was easier for them to see the true value of other people. And especially, you know, their own spouses and children and things. Like now I think people, you know, everything, and we're such a leisure and indulgence culture, like it, you know, you lose sight of that stuff. And not saying you have to have children or you have to be married, because everyone has a different vocation in life, but like everybody's vocation is about giving yourself up for someone else in some way. And I think that this movie does a good job like portraying that. So what else? Are you guys struck by anything else? I know something about this movie. It's so much more about like what's around the sports and the fights than it is about the fights themselves.
Agreed. I would have to say it's a combination of things, particularly towards the end of the film in the lead up to the fight. The press conference, you know, the reporters ask, what is Jimmy fighting for? And he says, milk. Of course, that has to do with survival. And with that being said, towards the final moments of the fight where he does, in the results, unanimous decision win, you know, he in the lead up, he's willing to accept whatever the fight is. It's not like his ego is in the way. And then you see in the lead up to the fight, everyone in the the church, celebrating a man, because clearly these people are struggling too in Jersey. It just shows that the working man who goes from rags to riches, he's a true representation of hope. You know, positivity and a attitude of hope during these tough times.
Yeah. And and it happens a lot, even minorly, like during the movie, is that it's so much about them trying to put on a good face during tough times. I mean, like, first of all, like making sure their kids don't really see how really bad it actually is, whether it's like they refill the milk so that it looks full, even though it's mostly watered down, or once again, him giving up his breakfast for his daughter, like, or just like even when we're talking about the scene where he confronts his son about stealing, he talks about how there are people even worse off than them. So like kind of keeping that perspective, like being so, this idea of like having that perspective and being positive. And even when Jimmy, like he's supposed to get that one fight and it's going to be his goodbye fight, and he's really kind of just supposed to be like just like a punching bag for this guy to warm up on, like in the first comeback fight. Like he's like, okay, yeah, at least I get to go out on like the biggest in the Madison Square Garden. Like I get to go out on a big stage, and you know, whatever happens. He's not greedy, he's not egotistical, he's not negative. He's like, oh, I'm just getting a pity party. Like it's all very positive. It's all very grounded. And so that like I think it wasn't necessarily just that, oh, he's a poor guy that's fighting. It's like everybody recognized that this was a quality man. Like this isn't just in the boxing ring. Like he's a good man outside of the boxing ring. And so that's why so many people rallied behind him. So yeah, that idea that he is, oh man. And just as you said, like talking about he's fighting for milk, like, you know, the first time around when he was rich, he was fighting just for fame. And then this time around he was fighting for his family's survival, like and for other people.
And then a kind of another angle that we can take this to is looking at his relationship with his trainer, his name, Joe, the character.
Yeah, Joe Gold.
And the fact that he, you know, in order to get him that fight, I don't know, the exhibition fight or whatever that like brought him back into the limelight after losing his license, he himself like sold his possessions, right? He like sold everything in his apartment to give him money, like to give to Braddock so that he could train and so that he could be all right, his family could be okay. So he took a risk of selling his family's possessions, his apartment, like getting rid of all of this furniture, like almost everything, to have money to give to him. You know,
that's
and
a
like
big bet.
That alone is a sacrifice, you know, and that's giving to someone who he loves and supports and who thinks he can, you know, can make it for, obviously for his well and betterment too. But you know, like that moment too is another great example of a good friendship and sacrifice and a masculine move.
Yeah. And it wasn't, and we see like everything leading up to it. It's not because he's like betting on him in terms of like, oh, I see a money making opportunity. He's betting on his friend because he knows his friend is capable. Like he's the only guy in like the boxing federation that didn't give up on him. Like he couldn't do anything about his license getting revoked because he was just a trainer in the business. But like he's the only guy who didn't give up on him. Like he knew what he was capable of and knew that, I don't know, like he believed in him even a little bit when Braddock didn't believe in himself. Like, like you obviously saw that like Joe Gold did not stop believing in Jim Braddock. And that's, that's, as you said, that's good male friendship.
And isn't that like what we all want, like in a friendship too? Like when we're at our lowest, we have somebody in our corner being a cheerleader, building ourselves up. That is the definition of a trainer, but at the same time, like
that's a friend.
A friend.
Yeah.
That's what a friend is, right?
Yeah. He knows what to do, what to say, and where this guy's at. And just, oh my goodness. It's just it's such a good sports movie for everyone listening. I mean, the Depression era actually was a time of a lot of inspiring sports stories. If anyone's ever seen Seabiscuit, if we ever do a podcast about horses, we could talk about Seabiscuit, but we don't. He was a male horse, but we're not horses. So, but that's another example of somewhere else during the same time period, there was like the little guy who was succeeding and giving hope to the people.
Speaking of Great Depression, I was a history teacher before this, and as I was student teaching, the first time I had ever watched Cinderella Man was before student teaching, like right before. And I said to my cooperating teacher at the time, because I was teaching the Great Depression, wouldn't it be a good idea like to include this in like part of the lesson? So we ended up watching Cinderella Man.
Nice.
And the kids, a lot of them were in inner city, had never seen anything like it before, and were absolutely glued to the screen, especially in the final fight. So, yeah. I was happy to give that little bit because the Depression, a lot of it can be boring when you kind of go into the nitty gritty political stuff, especially like with court packing and stuff like that after this fight had even occurred. But to go into it with something a little bit more dramatic makes it really good. And I noticed that a lot of other history teachers also use this as part of their lessons.
Well, and it's personal. It shows you like what was it like for a person during the Depression, not just like what was happening historically. It's like what was this like? Because that's overall what the Depression was. It really was a personal thing that happened to a lot of people. Like it wasn't just, hey, the stock market crashed and the war is on the horizon, all that stuff. It was like, like real people, like really struggled, like every single day. And that's kind of like what we got. I mean, then they call them the greatest generation. They went through a lot and they came out the other side. I mean, every generation's got its greatness to it, but I mean, that was a hard draw. Like a hard draw.
If you think about it, you get the Great Depression, you get World War II, you get the Korean War, you get Vietnam War.
Not even just that. If you were born in 1910, what are the things that you went through? You're 8 years old by the time 9 years old by the time World War I ends. Then you have the Treaty of Versailles. Then you have like a good nice period from 1920 to 1929.
But
you see
Prohibition then too.
Yeah. Fair enough, actually.
It wasn't that nice. No.
Right when you're like 19 years old or something like that. But then Black Tuesday happens, and then everything just comes down and crashes. And then you have a good 10-year period.
People fought through, and they do make a point in the movie that they are people of faith, even though one of the downsides about the movie is that there's halfway through Jim starts kind of giving up a little bit on faith and prayer and things like that, and they never really resolve that plot point by the end. They never say whether or not he came back to faith or not, but which is unfortunate. But at least his wife was faith was very important to her. She was a devout Christian, devout Catholic, and and that was part of it. It does show them praying together at one point too, so that's very inspiring as well. Yeah, but in the
Great
end,
movie.
Jesus is our ultimate comeback story.
Hmm.
Even though I guess he was never the underdog, but God is never the underdog. But he came to the world kind of as an underdog, as a simple man, as a poor man. But anyway, so Cinderella Man, everyone, we recommend it. We highly recommend you watch it. If you're a man, if you're a woman, maybe not
If
you're
you're
a
in
child.
high school,
If you're a
and you're learning the
teenager.
Great Depression,
Yeah, it's historical. It's good for marriage, good for parenting, good for spiritual life, good if you're a sports fan. Russell
Good
Crowe's a
for
pretty great
men.
actor, so he does a pretty good job.
it's the poor man's Gladiator.
Or it's the actual historical Rocky. I love how people like treat Rocky like he was an actual person. He's got like the statue and everything. He's like Rocky, and it's like, oh man, if only Rocky was real.
So what we would all like you to do right now is subscribe to Seizing Valor, and please like this video and hit that notification bell, because you'll be able to see our videos upcoming. That's really important because it helps us out in the algorithm. Also, follow us at Seizing Valor, which is going to be on Instagram. We do post extra content on there that we would love to hear you guys comment on and like as well. Also, we are located on Spotify as well for our video episodes. If you would choose to watch or listen to us on there on your morning commute, please put your prayer intentions or comments, concerns, qualms, queries, doubts, misapprehensions in the comment section, whether it be on Instagram or YouTube. But if you want to actually make that not public, I should say, you should probably put that in an email, which is seizingvalor@gmail.com. Very important. Have a dialogue with us, especially if you guys think that we are wrong or our opinions are garbage. We will take it in stride.
I won't.
Joe, that was like the longest tag I feel like we've ever had.
I felt a little bit like
everyone, like us and listen to us and tell other people to do the same. The end. Prayer time. Who's praying?
Joe, you should pray.
So just keep talking.
All right, let us pray. I will not mess this up, and I will not say let us re-pray. All right.
Let's re-pray.
Let's repray.
God loves it when we re-pray.
An instant repray.
All right, gentlemen. Let's bow our heads. God, thank you for these fine gentlemen in front of me on the screen. Thank you all for this fantastic conversation. Thank you all for in attendance, listening, and thank you, just God, for like your faithfulness. Thank you, God, for instilling us determination and positivity and humility, and for the ability to have role models like James Braddock. It's a true Hollywood story that, like a lot of movies these days, just teach us the wrong messages. But with this one, like, knocked us out of the park. Thank you for the writers of this movie, Cinderella Man. Thank you for the director. Thank you for the actors who portrayed what it means to be a man in such glorious fashion. And thank you for also the teaching of how to treat other people, particularly like our children, our youth, and also the women, and also just thank you for the ability for expression, freedom of expression in an artistic format. It's a true representation of what we should be as men: determined and forthcoming in our opinions, and forthcoming in what we should be, and working hard during tough times. The Great Depression, we only know it, God, in tales and through these artistic modes, and maybe even through our family members telling how hard it was, God. But even in these tough times, they create strong men. And I pray that, we as a generation of men would remember that. We as a generation would know that you've got our back. In your precious name, Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all for attending this discussion. Please watch Cinderella Man, and we will see you all next week.
Peace out.